Inflation is in everybody's conversation right now. But to understand where it's going, you need to understand what it is and why it happens. So today, I'm going to tell you all you need to know about inflation, what it is, its role in the economy, how it's manipulated, and its risks and consequences when it gets out of control. Good morning, afternoon, or evening, everybody. My name is Hector. Welcome to my channel. I really appreciate you guys stopping by. And if you are new around here, in this channel, I provide educational content about all things related to personal finance, including investment in stock markets, real estate, and more risky assets like crypto and NFTs. So if you're into that kind of stuff, please consider subscribing. All right, enough chatter. Let's talk about inflation. Inflation is a monetary phenomenon in which general levels of prices for goods and services rises and results in a decrease in purchasing power of the country's currency. Inflation can be good or bad, depending on how fast the price of these goods and services rise. A moderate increase of 1 to 2% a year generally does little harm to the economy. But when inflation really takes off, it hurts people and businesses by eroding their purchasing power of money. Economists known as monetarists believe that inflation is caused by overexpansion of the money supply. This means that the Federal Reserve of the country or central bank creates more money than the economy needs for steady growth, and this excess leads to higher prices. Another explanation is a demand pool, in which the demand for goods and services outpaces their supply and pulls up the price. As you might recall, here in the US, we had a few episodes of that in 2020. Yeah, it's a little crazy. Still, another cause of inflation is cost push, in which the rising cost of commodities like oil pushes up other prices. For instance, if oil becomes more scarce and increases in price, this increase will push other items' prices as well, because the cost of transportation for these items will be higher, and this will translate to an increase in price to the final customer. In extreme cases, called hyperinflation, prices rise so fast that money becomes virtually worthless. That happened in Germany in 1923, when the government printed so much currency that it took 140 billion marks just to buy a loaf of bread. Currently, if you are watching this video in the beginning of 2022, the inflation rate is the highest that it's been in the past 3 decades, reaching almost 7% in the Consumer Price Index. But inflation is not all that bad. As we said earlier, there's a few pros to inflation when kept under control. For instance, when the economy is not running at capacity, meaning there is unused labor or resources, inflation theoretically helps increase production. More dollars translate to more spending, which equates to more aggregated demand. More demand, in turn, triggers more production to meet that demand. Economists even believe that some inflation is necessary to prevent things like the paradox of thrift, which says that if consumer prices are allowed to fall consistently because the country is becoming too productive, consumers learn to hold off their purchases to wait for a better deal. The net effect of this paradox is a reduction in the aggregate demand, leading to less production, layoffs, and faltering economy. This is what happens with Bitcoin. Initially, Bitcoin was created to be a decentralized currency, a medium of exchange, something that you could go to the store and buy stuff with it. But because of its deflationary nature, Bitcoin's valuation has skyrocketed, making Bitcoin holders to not want to spend their Bitcoin. So, the narrative of Bitcoin has completely shifted from a medium of exchange to a store of value, similar to gold. In fact, some people even call it digital gold. Now, that is great for us crypto bucks, but it would be terrible for an economy system. No one would ever spend any money. No goods or services would be acquired by anybody thinking that their money would be more valuable tomorrow. That would lead to a lack in demand, which would lead to a slowdown in production, which eventually would lead to unemployment and a slow growth economy. So we don't want deflation. Deflation is actually bad for economy. It's good for hypervaluations, but it's bad for the economy. This is why the government figured that a little inflation is healthy for the economy. Just a little bit, just around 2%, they figured, is enough to stimulate spending while keeping businesses profitable and purchasing power decently steady. Inflation also makes it easier on debtors, who repay their loans with money that is less valuable than the money they borrowed. Perhaps most important to the Federal Reserve is that the US government is the largest debtor in the world, and inflation helps to soften the blow of this massive debt. So the way regulators attempt to keep inflation in check is through their central bank. In the US, the central bank is called the Fed, or Federal Reserve. As every central bank, it regulates how much money floats around the US economy. In other words, the Fed controls the money supply. Remember what we said about the reasons that cause inflation? Well, I have a whole video on the Fed, how they operate, and why I believe they won't stop printing money anytime soon. But for the purposes of this video, let's just say that the Fed is the one institution that has a money printer in their basement and has full authority to increase or decrease the money supply in the economy. Of course, it's a lot more complex than that, for which I would encourage you to watch that video up here. But yes, the Fed is in charge of keeping inflation in check and thereby the stability of the US economy and potentially the world's economy. So, just to summarize, inflation is a decrease in purchasing power of a country's currency with respect of the goods and services. High rates of inflation are bad for the economy, but low rates of inflation have some benefits, like promoting spending and borrowing, which generally translates to economic growth. The Fed, or central bank if you're in a different country, is the institution in charge of controlling inflation levels, mostly by regulating money supply. Alright my friends, I hope this video was informative to you and you learned something new about inflation. If you liked it, would you do me a favor and hit that like button? They say it helps the channel to grow. And if you really enjoyed it, would you subscribe to the channel and hit that bell notification so you get notified every time I post a new video. Alright, this is it for today guys. Bye!